Namaste, aloha, and welcome. My name is Janapati Das, and we are going to read some more of Krishna book today. So let me offer my respects to all of you who have joined in today, and I'll take time to offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual teacher who taught me all the knowledge that I know that I'm teaching you today, and taught me the process of hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, which we're going to do right now. So we'll get right into it. Tune my guitar. That was the one right there. Namo Vishnu Padaya Haribol. Once again, Haribol means to sing and repeat the names of Krishna, the Supreme. So we are going to get back into our story, and it's been a few days, so I'll go to the page and we'll do a little recap. If we remember from our previous class, our previous reading, excuse me, I'm actually going to move in a little closer, I think. You can hear me okay? Ugh. Monday. Monday weakness. Okay. We were reading about Lord Brahma, right? And Lord Brahma had been bewildered by the pastimes of this cowherd boy, and he wanted to see some more amazing capabilities coming from Krishna. So he's going to do something here. I won't get into it yet because I'll just read it. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. At that time, the calves were pasturing nearby entered into a deep forest, allured by new grasses, and gradually they went out of sight. When the boys saw that the calves were not nearby, they became afraid for their safety and immediately cried out, "Krishna, Krishna!" Krishna is the killer of fear personified. Everyone is afraid of fear personified, but fear personified is afraid of Krishna. And we had mentioned this last time, that in the Bhagavad Gita there is a famous quote, of many famous quotes, but the one at the end that my spiritual master often quotes, and that is, "Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I will give you all protection from sinful reactions. Do not fear." And this is something that exists quite a bit in the material world, this fear. Many people, most people, are afraid of one thing and ultimately accumulating in the fear of death. People are afraid of losing things. People are afraid of they're not going to be happy. The fear of so many things, of course, and the fear of death overshadows it all. It actually drives most things. That if you're not going to be happy, if you don't have this thing, you won't be happy. And if you're not happy, then you'll just be miserable, and then you'll die. So there's all this fear attached in the material world, and Krishna doesn't like that. So he always, he likes to have fun, but in a situation where there's a problem, he wants to resolve it quickly. So his friends and his dear devotees will not be afraid. And that's a very important thing. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid because our life here is temporary. If we just take our attention and our abilities that we try so hard to find happiness and just redirect it on this wonderful personality, the personality of Godhead Krishna and his pastimes, we'll find that your fear just dissipates. You're not afraid. You're not an anxiety over different things. You may have some stresses, of course, because of the material world, but in the end game, Krishna's got your back. Krishna will protect you from all things, big and small. By crying out the word Krishna, the boys at once transcended the fearful situation. All you have to say is Krishna. There's that old saying, if you're happy, say Krishna. If you're sad, just say Krishna. If you're afraid, say Krishna. If you're angry, say Krishna. Everything Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Out of his great affection, Krishna didn't want his friends to give up their pleasing lunch engagement and go searching for the calves. He therefore said, "My dear friends, you need not interrupt your lunch. Go on enjoying. I am going personally to where the calves are." Thus Lord Krishna immediately started to search out the calves in the caves and bushes. He searched in the mountain holes and in the forest, but nowhere could he find them. At that time, when Aghasura was killed and the demigods were looking on the incident, with great surprise, Brahma, who was born out of the lotus flower growing out of the navel of Vishnu, also came to see. He was surprised how a little boy like Krishna could act so wonderfully. Although he was informed that the little cowherd boy was the supreme personality of Godhead, he wanted to see more glorified pastimes of the Lord, and thus he stole all the calves and cowherd boys and took them to a different place. So the demigods, even the greatest demigod, Lord Brahma, they are still living entities. They're very powerful, albeit powerful living entities in powerful positions with much more power and wisdom than most humans. And yet they can become bewildered by the material energy and forget that Krishna is all powerful and all capable of doing anything he wants. Even if he comes into a situation where he seems like an ordinary cowherd boy, but does all these wonderful feats, and Brahma's like, like, I wonder. Powerful demigods like Indra. There's another story that will be coming up as well about Lord Indra, which we'll also get into Govardhan Hill. Although he was informed that the little cowherd boy was the supreme personality of Godhead, he wanted to see more glorified pastimes of the Lord, and thus he stole all the calves and cowherd boys and took them to a different place. Lord Krishna, therefore, in spite of searching for the calves, could not find him, and he even lost his boyfriends on the bank of the Jamuna, where they had been taking their lunch. In the form of a cowherd boy, Lord Krishna was very little in comparison to Brahma, but because he is the supreme personality of Godhead, he could immediately understand that all calves and boys have been stolen by Brahma. Krishna thought, Brahma has taken away all the boys and calves. How can I alone return to Vrindavan? The mothers will be aggrieved. So this is also a really important point, that Krishna is all-encompassing. He can be the greatest of the greatest, the largest of the largest, the most powerful, but he can be the smallest of the smallest. He can be any size and still maintain his supremacy over everything. So the things that maybe people have capability of doing, demigods or even yogis with mystic powers, are very pale in comparison to the power and as we've talked about, that Krishna has all opulences, including strength and opulence, wealth, beauty, renunciation, intelligence. It's all in full. So anything that we have in this material world, even if we have a lot of something, it pales in comparison to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is a really good point, because not oftentimes, just all the time, atheistic thinkers are considered like mudhas. They're foolish because they think, well, with my powerful intelligence of the material world, I can't figure out the absolute truth. So there can't be a possibility of any personality who has inconceivable powers, but yet there is. That is the definition of God. So, therefore, in order to satisfy the mother of his friends as well as to convince Brahma of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead, he immediately expanded himself as the cowherd boys and calves. So you see that Brahma has taken all the boys and calves and put them in a hid them in a state of sleep. So they're gone, and Krishna's like, well, I can't have that happen, because all the residents of all my devotees will be upset because all the cows and the boys are gone. So he just expanded himself and made them the exact personality. This is the inconceivable power and potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nobody can do that except for God. In the Vedas, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself in so many living entities by his energy. Therefore, it was not very difficult for him to expand himself again into so many boys and calves. Inconceivable potency. Krishna's energy is a chinta beda beda tattva. In other words, it's simultaneously one energy and at the same time has differentiated personalities and separated. So it's simultaneously one but different. He expanded himself to be exactly like the boys, who were of different features, facial and bodily construction, and who were of different in their clothing and ornaments and in their behavior and personal activities. In other words, everyone has different tastes, being individual soul. Each person has entirely different activities and behavior. So therefore, that is why I said that our energy is the same, but yet different, because we are all individual souls, independent, yet dependent. we have, we're all equally different from each other, but yet we are all the same spiritual energy. This is wonderful energies and abilities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, yet Krishna exactly expanded himself into all the different positions of the individual boys. He also became the calves, who were also of different sizes, colors, activities, etc. This was possible because everything is an expansion of Krishna's energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is said, Parashya Brahma Shakti. Whatever we actually see in the cosmic manifestation, be it matter or the activities of the living entities, is simply an expansion of the energies of the Lord, as heat and light are different expansions of fire. So that's also a very important point. When we take something like an example like fire, qualities of fire include heat and light. You can't take heat and light out of fire. It's simultaneously one, yet they're different properties. In other words, you can't take it out. You can have light, you can have heat, and you can have fire. But when you have fire, there is heat and light. Without heat and light, there is no fire, right? You can't have a dark fire, and you can't have a cold fire. So, that being said, that's the example used that Bhaktivedanta uses to explain the simultaneously one quality of energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet differentiated. Thus expanding himself as the boys and calves in their individual capacities and surrounding by such expansions of himself, Krishna entered the village of Vrindavan. The residents had no knowledge of what had happened. After entering the village Vrindavan, all the calves. Sorry, let me start that over again. After entering the village Vrindavan, all the calves entered their respective cowsheds, and the boys also went to their respective mothers and homes. So this is all Krishna's expansion of his energies going into different homes, and they all have the exact personality, features, and everything of the original cowherd boys and cows. This is amazing. The mothers of the boys heard the vibration of the flutes before their entrance, and to receive them, they came out of their homes and embraced them. Out of maternal affection, milk was flowing from their breasts, and they allowed the boys to drink it. However, their offering was not exactly to their boys, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it was Krishna. So they were offering these things thinking that they were their children, but not understanding why am I so attracted to my child? It's like because it was Krishna, and then they offered their milk they're actually offering it to Krishna. However, their offering was not exactly to their boys, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had expanded himself into such boys. This was another chance for all the mothers of Vrindavan to feed the Supreme Personality of Godhead with their own milk. Therefore, Lord Krishna gave not only Yashoda the chance of feeding him, but this time he gave the chance to all the elderly gopis. All the boys began to deal with their mothers as usual, and the mothers also, on the approach of evening, began to bathe their respective children, decorate them with tilak and ornaments, and give them necessary food after the day's labor. The cows also, who were away in the pasturing grounds, returned in the evening and began to call their respective calves. The calves immediately came to their mothers, and the mothers began to lick the bodies of the calves. In the relations between the cows and the gopis with their calves and the boys remained unchanged, although actually the original calves and boys were not there. Actually, the cow's affection for the calves and elderly gopis' affection for the boys causelessly increased, which is a wonderful story, because in our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the more we serve Krishna, the more we engage in Krishna Katha, the more we do things for Krishna and inundate our consciousness in Krishna consciousness, the more sweet and attractive this becomes, just like these gopis and these cows who are having affection for what they think is their calves and their children, but actually Krishna. Their affection increased naturally, even though the calves and boys were not their offspring. Although the cows and elderly gopis of Vrindavan had greater affection for Krishna than their own offspring after this incident, their affection for their offspring increased exactly as it did for Krishna. Imagine that. 1 year continually, Krishna himself expanded as the calves and cowherd boys and was present in the pasturing grounds. So this is why, as we go back to the story where King Parikshit is asking Shukadeva Goswami, why did they not hear the story of Agashura for a year? It was because they were captured for a year, and the expansions of the cows and the calves and the boys were actually Krishna for a year. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's expansion is situated in everyone's heart as a supersoul. Similarly, instead of expanding himself as a supersoul, he expanded himself as a portion of calves and cowherd boys for 1 continuous year. One day, when Krishna, along with Balaram, was maintaining the calves in the forest, they saw some cows grazing on the top of Govardhan Hill. The cows could see down into the valley where the calves were being taken care of by the boys. Suddenly, on sighting their calves, the cows began to run towards them. They leaped downhill with joined front and rear legs. The cows were so melted with affection from their calves that they did not care about the rough path from the top of Govardhan Hill down to the pasturing ground. They began to approach the calves with their milk bags full of milk, and they raised their tails upward. When they were coming down the hill, their milk bags were pouring milk on the ground out of intense maternal affection for the calves. So it was Krishna, actually, although they were not their own calves. These cows had their own calves, so they're seeing other calves. So normally a cow would be showing affection towards their own calves, not other calves. But because they're seeing Krishna, they're just like, whoa! They're just so affectionate, and they run down with wanting to feed them the milk. And the calves that were grazing beneath Govardhan Hill were larger, but they were not expected to drink milk directly from the milk bag, but were satisfied with the grass. Yet all the cows came immediately and began to lick their bodies, and the calves also began to suck milk from their milk bags. There appeared to be a great bondage of affection between the cows and calves. When the cows were running down from the top of the Govardhan Hill, the men who were taking care of them tried to stop them. Elderly cows are taken care of by the men, and the calves are taken care of by the boys. And as far as possible, the calves are kept separate from the cows, so that the calves do not drink all the available milk. Therefore, the men who were taking care of the cows on top of the Govardhan Hill tried to stop them, but they failed. Baffled by their failure, they were feeling ashamed and angry. They were very unhappy, but when they came down and saw their children taking care of the calves, they all of a sudden became very affectionate towards the children. The fathers are like seeing Krishna in the form of their children, and they're just like, wow, so attracted to them. It was very astonishing. Although the men came down disappointed, baffled, and angry, as soon as they saw their own children, their hearts melted with great affection. So there's a really great point in this, and once again drawing back to this idea of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness, the hearing and chanting Krishna's names, the engaging in the service of Krishna, can melt the heart of the most lowest demoniac person. And there are a lot of stories about that, including Jagai and Madai, and the story of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, who were thieves and murderers and became great devotees of Krishna. And the case of Haridas Thakur and the prostitute. The prostitute eventually became a devotee and gave up her life of being a prostitute. And this is seen time and time again. Even a good friend of mine, one of my godbrothers, told me that he was told to pray to Lord Nrsingadev. Lord Nrsingadev, of course, is an incarnation of Krishna, and another great story of a transcendental anger. You know, he's this very ferocious but loving incarnation of Krishna, and and by meditating on the transcendental anger of Lord Nrsingadev, his anger melted and only what were replaced with love. So this is a very important point, that all bad qualities can be dissipated. All stress and anxiety and fear that we're talking about can be replaced with love, intense love and confidence and happiness and peace in this service of Krishna that is ever becoming enriching. And the enrichment is continuing eternally. So, and when you engage in this and you read about the philosophy, you just realize you're struck with awe about how amazing and how deep this philosophy is. So that's a very important point. At once their anger, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness disappeared. They began to show paternal love for the children